Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to dive into the main topic of this episode, which is the passing of Orioles prospect Luis Guevara after a jet ski accident last Sunday. The Orioles announced Guevara's death on Tuesday. In a statement attributed to General Manager Mike Elias, Elias said, quote, "Luis was a beloved member of our organization. We are devastated following his tragic passing. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, friends, and teammates, and we ask for their continued privacy during this difficult time." Local officials continue to investigate the incident, so there is more that we are sure to learn in the coming weeks and months. What is known for now, though, is that two of Guevara's fellow prospects in the Orioles system, Miguel Rodriguez and Jesus Palacios, were involved in the accident. Rodriguez has been on the IL since an injury in Delmarva earlier this season, while Palacios remains on the active roster for the FCL Orioles, but has not pitched since June 13th. The FCL Orioles games last week were postponed on Monday and Tuesday, and then on Thursday following a scheduled off day on Wednesday. They resumed play on Friday. The three of us here send our condolences to Guevara's family and friends, as well as his teammates and coaches in the Orioles organization. We're not going to get into speculation about what might have happened because this is not the time or place for that. But we just want to start with this conversation. Nick, I know you had a chance to talk about it a little bit earlier today on our Patreon bonus episode. This is just very, very tough and tragic news.
Yeah, we're talking about too many teenage prospects passing away since we started this show. I think this is the second time we've done this, but yeah, I know. I'm sure people listening who are also parents can probably understand this, sympathize with this, and probably feel the same way. When you hear stories like this, I feel like since I've had my two kids, they hit a little deeper, and my mind instantly goes to like, what if that was like my kid? Like putting myself in Guevara's parents' shoes. Like, what if that's my kid? And he was signed out of Venezuela, and so your child's in a whole other country, and then you get a phone call saying this is what happened. We couldn't save your kid. So like it sucks. I feel bad for his family. I feel bad for his teammates. And he was in this organization for 4 years, and just this year alone, when you played at the FCL level and Delmarva, and even a couple of games up with Chesapeake, it's like it wasn't like an isolated incident in Dominican Summer League where like this guy was, there were people in that Chesapeake clubhouse who were like, man, I was just hitting behind this guy a couple weeks ago. Like I was just sitting next to this guy in the dugout and now he's no longer here. So I'm sure this had a major impact on a lot of people in the organization. And I can't even begin to imagine what it's like for, Miguel Rodriguez and Palacios, and probably an event that is going to replay in their heads every single day for the rest of their life. So yeah, it sucks. Unfortunately, I know there was another article in the banner. I don't know if you guys read that. I saw it. I saw it get tweeted out like right at dinner time. So I kind of skimmed through it, but I guess they reached out to some of his friends who are also playing ball here professionally, some of them, and just the things they had to say were, it was a good article. Kind of sad to read, but yeah, wish him all the best. And hopefully the players, especially Rodriguez, Palacios, and other people who, were very close with him, hopefully the organization, provided these guys with the right resources and everything. And, not going to say they're going to get over it because they're not, but, hopefully I don't even know what's that. I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, there's really no words that can do this justice. It's just absolutely tragic, sad. There's so much, no matter the circumstances, what I'm sure they'll investigate it and however it plays out. But Rodriguez and Palacios, it just seemed like a freak accident. Maybe, these are kids. They're maybe being a little reckless, but just the guilt that they must feel. And luckily, I do think that the Orioles have been pretty proactive when it comes to mental skills. So I'm sure they're doing everything they can there to help them deal with it. And also, it's just, we were excited when Nate George, Luis Almeida, Joshua Lorenzo were promoted to Delmarva. One of the corresponding moves was Luis Guevara to the FCL, and then this happens days later. It's, terrible timing. Just, I'm sure there's a lot of guilt involved everywhere, but it's just a freak thing. It happens. This is why you gotta appreciate what you got while it's here, because you just never know when it's going to get ripped away from you. So rest in peace, and all the best to everybody that knew who he was.
Yeah, this is, there's never a good time for something like this to happen, but it has to be especially hard for these players for it to happen in season because, Nick, as you pointed out, Guevara played on 3 teams within this organization this year. He had been in the Dominican Summer League for 2 years before that. So a lot of players had firsthand opportunities to be his teammate. A lot of coaches had an opportunity to work with him. And this has to be really, really difficult for them.
Yeah, and also another thing too, sometimes I'll be the first to raise my hand and say I'm guilty of this as well. There are a lot of guys we'll talk about. Guy's not a prospect. He's just not good at baseball, right? And we typically try to stay away from that. When guys are struggling, we're not gonna. There's no need to highlight that. These guys see everything you talk about. They read it all. They listen to it all. They see everything on social media. They know when things aren't going well, and they don't need to read like your crappy comments and your crappy thoughts about their play. But you also get in this mindset of like he's just an org guy, just a filler, right? They're assets, right? Those terms getting thrown around. You're like, this is one of those moments where like step back and realize like they're all human beings, man. And that was a child. He was 19 years old. With a dream. That article in the Banner did a really good job of his friends describing like that was his dream since he was like 3 years old to play baseball professionally here in the States, and he was getting that chance. And so yeah, it's an opportunity to kind of sit back and realize like these are human beings, man. Yes, they're athletes, but they're human beings. And in some cases they're children, and yeah, just a really unfortunate event, like you said, to happen right here in the middle of the season. How do you get back on that mound? How do you step back out on that field knowing like your brother's not there with you? But
yeah, it's very well said there. And yeah, it's just like there's a reason that we don't focus on the negatives when it comes to the minor leaguers who are making barely anything and just living out their dream, trying to make it as a professional ball player. And it's a little bit different once you're in the major leagues. You've made $1 million plus multi-million dollars, then it's like, okay, we can be a little more straightforward because you can go cry into your $1 million home or whatever. But yeah, these kids, they just want to play ball for a living and make some money. But even more than that, they just want to be out there playing a game that they love. And yeah, it's just incredibly sad that's taken away from Luis.
Yeah, I think that the 3 of us never, even if it sounds like we do, sometimes we certainly never want to talk about these players like they are commodities because they're not. They're human beings. And I think that that's really going to be a takeaway going forward. It's something I think about a lot, but it really, really hits home now. And we'll, of course, have more on this story as news emerges. I'm sure that we will hear more over the coming weeks and months. But for now, there is an investigation still to play out, and we will have some reaction to that at the time as appropriate. We will go back now to focusing on what has been happening on the field. The Orioles did get some good news on the injury front down at AA Chesapeake as Braxton Bragg and Levi Wells both came off the IL to make starts over the weekend after very short stays. And it was a successful outing for both pitchers. Bragg pitched on Sunday, went 4 1/3 innings over 59 pitches while giving up 1 run on 5 hits with 5 strikeouts and a walk. Wells, meanwhile, had pitched on Saturday, giving up 1 run over 3 innings of work. And what's notable here with Bragg is that is a steep drop in the pitch count. Bragg had been up into the upper 80s and low 90s in his pitch counts shortly before going on the IL. So clearly being eased back into that workload, but still able to get pretty far into his start and essentially pick up where he left off. So I want to start there because the velocity readings that we had from the game on Sunday as the Bay Sox took on Erie were pretty positive, and it looks like the stuff was fully back after that very short reset for him.
Yeah, I watched pretty much every pitch of his outing, and yeah, stuff looked exactly how it looked before the injury to me. I mean, 94 to 96, sitting with the fastball. He touched 97. He's throwing all his pitches, no problem. He was command was good. He got he was getting squeezed by that ump, and he still managed to pitch the way he did. I was surprised they gave him just under 60 pitches, missing a couple weeks there because Michael Ferret, they really eased him in. And I guess it's a little bit different with his back. They wanted to really be careful with that. And speaking of him, glad he's kind of fully back to full strength now, it seems like. But yeah, Bragg looked fantastic. It's such a relief that he's able to come back after such a short amount of time. And like we said, when the Orioles came out and said this is minor, like they kept like doing things that they wouldn't do if it wasn't minor, if because it would have been radio silence if it was serious in most cases. So just really glad that he was able to get through the outing, and he seemed healthy all the way through. Didn't seem like he had any setbacks. So hopefully it's full steam ahead for the rest of the year, and he'll be in AAA soon. That's I think where it's headed.
Yeah, we're getting really healthy here on the minor league front. Maybe too healthy, and we're waiting for. Although we did get that Enrique Bradfield news yesterday, but and the Dylan Beavers news, so it's a give and take, I guess. But on the pitching side, it's good to see these guys. We've gotten some behind the scenes positive reports on Alex Pham. Nothing definite, and considering the sources, I'm going to trust that information is trustworthy, and that he will return to the mound this year, which is a good sign. And when you see pitchers just fall like they have, and you see some of these other arms, especially Bragg, leave for reasons that they did have to leave their outings, it's scary. And we didn't avoid it with Patrick Riley, but it seems like we're getting lucky with a lot of other cases. I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch Braxton Bragg normally the rest of the year. To be honest, like I'm going to be freaking out every single time just because like he comes out this year. He's not a pop-up prospect, but like, in the sense of holy crap, this guy's really good. He is. But he pops up like this. He gets promoted twice. You've got this new velo. He wasn't throwing 97, 98. He's touched 100 this year. He wasn't doing that last year in Delmarva. There would have been people actually talking about it. We would have been talking about him more last year. He revamps the repertoire. He's up in Delmarva shoving. Because it's 2025 and we're Orioles fans, we can't have nice things. You expect the worst here when he leaves the game with the injury that he did. So I'm going to be freaked out, but for the Orioles to say it's not going to be long, and it really wasn't. It was a week. Was the 7-day IL like actually true in this instance? Like I am going to take that as a good sign though. Like and to go 60 pitches. Yeah, he wasn't up to 80 plus pitches that he had been, but still it wasn't 2 innings. Let's see how you feel tomorrow morning, and let's pray this is okay. There's no swelling, yada, yada. They're like 60 pitches, go at it, get the velo back up. You're all good. Seemed like that's the case. So thank God.
If I could do pure speculation on Wells, which is, it was nice to see him come back too. He's had a few minor things pop up on him this year, like abdominal issue. And now I feel like it was kind of, what is it when a lot of pitchers get in spring training, that dead arm period, maybe just a little bit of shoulder exhaustion because, he's ramped up his velocity as well. And yeah, hopefully, he only missed very little time, and he seemed himself back on the mound this week. So all good. And yeah, just keep getting healthy. Kiefer Lord, he's throwing. It's been almost a year since his surgery. He'll be back soon. It's on the major league side, the injuries keep popping up, and on the position side in the minors, it's we keep getting banged up, but the minor league pitching, which is what this organization's all about at this point, to be healthy as they are at this point in time, is pretty cool.
I want to talk about Ferret for a moment because you guys just brought him up, and I realized that in the time since he's come off the IL, we haven't necessarily had a chance to talk about him because it's been a lot of short outings up until over the weekend. On Saturday, he pitched 5 shutout innings against Brooklyn with 1 hit allowed, 4 strikeouts, and no walks. And it was his longest outing, what has been a gradual buildup since his return from the IL earlier this month. He won an inning plus in his first start back, which was on June 1st, then 3 in the next 2 innings. But he's been very effective as he's built up his workload. So far in 12 innings over those 4 starts since coming off the IL, Ferret has struck out 14 batters while walking just 3 and giving up only 1 earned run. So he pretty much has picked up right where he left off before the injury. And I know that there's been, some discussion among, prospect Orioles fans who really follow prospects closely. When are they going to finally move him up to Double-A? And I think it's been apparent that since he's come off the IL, they want to ease him back in, and that's a lot easier to do at a level he's familiar with than it is at a brand new level. But I have to feel that it's getting close after this start where he was able to get into the 5th inning and do so efficiently. Only 52 pitches needed to get through 5.
Yeah, I'm thinking one more week. I think it might be tied to Bragg, honestly, maybe a little bit, but get these guys a whole nother week of or a week of full blown. Here, you're back to your 75 to 80 pitches, and prove that you can get through the full workload. Okay, Bragg, you go up to AAA. Ferret, you go up to Double-A, or at least Ferret. I mean, I think batters are hitting under 100 or right around 100 against him all season long, and striking out like everybody. He's got the death ball working. He's got everything going for him. Just looks so poised on the mound, so refined, and especially at his young age, it's just so impressive. And yeah, I think he's mastered the high A level at this point. I think once he's fully back to the pitch workload, then I think he should be up in Double-A as well.
Yeah, Ferret, I'm thinking he didn't do a rehab assignment. I mean, like, because they know he's ready for Double-A, so they're just going to send him to Aberdeen to do a rehab anyway. But if you look at the game log at the beginning of the year here, so his first 2 outings, he walked half of his walks. 5 of his 10 walks this year came in his first 2 starts of the year. So he's walked 5 guys in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 outings since then. But yeah, it's 5 innings of shutout ball, 5 innings of 1-run ball, 5 innings of 1-run ball, 5 innings shutout again, no walks this last outing. Like, he's ready. He's ready for Double-A. That back injury just set him back. He's rehabbing, quote unquote, here in Aberdeen. And I think Sunday was the sign of he's fully back. Maybe he gets one more start next week, and then let's move him up. Like, this kid he was a super skinny JUCO kid who they grab in what round? 14th round. Yeah,
I think it's
14th round. 17th pick in the 14th round.
Okay.
But yeah, he just turned 21 years old. We know he's added a good amount of weight. And the big issue, you could say, last year was he walked a lot of guys. And you're worried about that command. I think Fangraphs gives him like a 30-something command right now. But you're worried about the walks. Okay, yeah, last year it was, 10? When he got to high A, he walked 11% of batters. 10.2% on the year. Not great. It's down to 8%. Like I just said, half those walks came in the first 2 starts of the year.
35% strikeout rate.
Yeah. And he walked those guys and it was 35 degrees outside. Like, yeah, Ferret's ready. This is, you kind of worried, like, I don't know. I kind of want to bump him down just a little bit because you see what Trey Gibson's doing. You see what Bragg's doing. But no, that was a mistake.
Yeah. And what's even more impressive is Sunday was the second game he pitched against the Mets affiliate Brooklyn. Was it Brooklyn? No, right? It was Brooklyn.
Yeah. Brooklyn. Yeah.
Tuesday, he pitched really well against them. And then he comes back against the same team, which is pretty decent lineup, and does even better. Meanwhile, Jonathan Santucci, who started Tuesday and Sunday matching up with Ferret against the Ironbirds, he still looked pretty good. So let's get him in an Orioles uniform as well, and then we can take it from there.
So just to put a few more numbers behind Ferret's dominance at high A this year, opposing hitters 334 OPS against Ferret. He has had a total of 124 plate appearances against him. Of those, 98 have been against older batters. Older batters have an OPS of 362 off Ferret with a 116 opposing average.
So clearly, that's an area he needs to improve to get back in line with the other guys, right? so impressive. It's just so impressive. And I feel like it's going under the radar because of the missed time with the back injury and just because we kind of expected it a little bit more from him to just be the steady guy. But let's not forget he just turned 21 in April compared to the Braggs and the Gibsons of the world who are 24-ish years old, and German, who we love those guys too. But Ferret's doing it at 21. He's still got a long way to develop. And yeah, it's going to be really tough race to see which of these guys is going to be like the best pitching prospect in the system by the end of the year.
Yeah, but we got to draft pitchers in the first round, right? That's what we got to do. That's why the system will never be good.
And with that, now we will head into our final segment of the show, Last Call, brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. And with the Orioles in town all week this week, not only could you check out Checker Spot before or after the game, you can also get their beer at the ballpark. Be sure to look at the beer stand behind home plate for the Bird is the Word, one of their signature beers. And on this Last Call segment, we're going to do our usual shout-out of players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 prospects list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or just something interesting in their stat line that we want to point out. And I'm going to start with Bob, who has a pitcher that made a pretty triumphant return to the mound this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going with, speaking of getting healthy, Carson Dorsey, 7th round pick out of the 2024 draft. And just to go back to our best pitching prospects, what is it? Undrafted free agent, 14th round pick, an 11th round pick. And I don't remember when Bragg was picked, but I'm pretty sure it was like 15th. So yeah, early draft pitchers not necessarily required in this system. And Carson Dorsey is no different. 7th round pick. I think he was the second pitcher drafted after Chase Ossopp in last year's draft. And honestly, the one I was most excited to see coming into the season, the lefty with the pretty good stuff, pretty good performance, which is rare for an Orioles pitcher draftee. Yeah, it was unfortunate when we found out that he was hurt to start the season. We were never really sure, still not sure exactly what the injury was, but once his name showed up in the transaction log that he's on the rehab appearance for FCL Orioles, it was like, here we go. Let's see. Can we add him? Okay, Braxton Bragg was the 8th. Okay, that's not bad. But yeah, so just very excited to get him back in the pitching rotation once he's fully healthy and back with Aberdeen. Maybe he takes Michael Ferret's spot in a couple of weeks. Yeah, just very, very curious to see what he can do and how the Orioles develop him. Just add his name to the list of high upside pitchers in the Orioles system. And then for my hitter, I went with where is the list? Jose Mejia, who is a guy down in the FCL who actually got some time in AA and low A this year, little spot starts or spot bench appearances for them this season. High A, and I think he was on the roster for AA. He never got into a game, but in the FCL, he's batting .308 with a 159 WRC plus. That's a 929 OPS. He's another one of these guys in the mold of a Aaron Estrada, Frederick Bencosme. He's 19 years old, doesn't turn 20 until the end of September, walks a bunch throughout his entire professional career, 17.6% in 2023. In the DSL, repeated the DSL 13.5% walk rate in a higher sample size there. So far this year, it's 16.4% in the FCL, and he doesn't strike out at all. Under 10% everywhere, except for when he had 7 plate appearances in high A. So just a guy that makes contact, and if he's going to start doing more damage the same way that Aaron Estrada did, then could it very well be a pop-up guy here for the Orioles.
I'll go to my guys. I was just looking at more Bragg stuff, and I haven't to look back at last year's draft class, even to go at that Bragg's draft class for a second. I mentioned that on this morning's weekly wrap up as well. Bragg and Zach Fruit were the money savers of that draft class, and now look at them. Like, come on, what are we even doing? But I'm going to go with, talk about a money saver. Jacob Cravey is my pick. He was a bit of a money saving pick when he was drafted, but out of Stanford, Actually, not really. They gave him $300,000. But he was a 6th-round pick out of Stanford. He was fine last year, but you look at last week, he had a start where he went 5 innings, 1 hit, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and a season high 7 strikeouts for Cravey. Just want to shout him out. I talked about this as well in the weekly episode. Like, Yibor Garcia is having a really good year for Delmarva. Cravey's having a better year. Does Cravey deserve a promotion to high A? Probably. I'd probably promote him first ahead of a guy like Cartaya, just because he's an older arm and, 83 innings at Delmarva last year, 57 already this year. He's not striking out as many guys. The strikeout rate is down to about 17.5%, but his walk rate went from 15% down to 9%. Opponents hit 270 off him last year. That's down to 225 this year. So, yeah, good to see him turn around this year. He definitely deserves a bump up. And then the other guy, the hitter, I think Zach had this guy last week. To be honest, I had Slim Pickens. I was the last one to choose my hitters here, and there wasn't really anybody else to choose from. So I'm going back to the well just because we got to highlight him again. Jamon Newell down in the Dominican Summer League. Guy signed for $500,000 the other year out of Jamaica. So a really cool story. Yes, he's repeating the DSL, but he's still just 18 years old, not even barely 18 and a half. Last week was an unbelievable week. He went 6 for 14. And I believe this includes their game today, which he didn't do great in. But 6 for 14 with a double or triple, a home run, 9 walks to 3 strikeouts in 5 games. An OPS of 1438. Yeah, that includes today's game because last week he had an OPS of almost 1800 for the week. But he's having a just unbelievable year. He struck out 30% of the time last year and hit 208. In the DSL this year, his strikeout rate is 13%. He's hitting 302 with a 171 WRC plus. Kid figured it out in year 2. It'd be cool if they promote him to the FCL this year, although the FCL season is just about done, I think. So they'll probably keep him in. I imagine they keep these guys who are in the DSL who probably deserve a promotion. At this point, they probably just stay in the DSL to get more at bats and get more innings because their season continues a little bit longer. FCL season will wrap up when the draft hits in like 2 weeks. So, yeah, shout out to Jamon Newell having a monster year.
Yeah, I guess if they're really high on someone, they'll shoot him up to Delmarva. But that roster's actually getting kind of full already. So they'll probably give some of the FCL guys a chance first. So, but good picks.
Yeah, good picks by both of you. I'm going to start my hitter, and it's Reed Trimble, who had a good finish to the week, got off to a little bit of a slow start, but 1 for 4 on Saturday, followed up by a 2 for 4 performance on Sunday. This year has been a little bit of a struggle for Trimble. He missed time early on with an injury. He got back to Chesapeake late last month after opening the season there and only appearing in 1 game before going on the IL. And it has been slow at the plate for him, but hopefully the good finish to last week gets him going. And then for my pitcher, it's a guy that I have to imagine is the top of the leaderboard for being shouted out in this segment this year, Acel Correa. And the reason is that he just puts together one really good appearance after the other. And he managed to do that on Sunday in a long relief outing. 4 innings, gave up 1 run on 1 hit with a strikeout, the 1 run coming on a solo home run. But it has been a really nice year for Correa. 2.45 ERA across 3 levels of the system, which includes Delmarva, Aberdeen, and Chesapeake, where he made a spot start 2 weeks ago with 42 strikeouts to 17 walks. And Correa has never been a strikeout pitcher. It's always been soft contact, ground balls, or where he finds success. And that has held true this year. There was one thing that I find interesting, though, and I'm going to have my eye on it for the rest of the season. His strikeout per 9 in 29 innings out of the rotation this year is 5.8, and that's 19 strikeouts and 29 to third innings pitched. However, out of the bullpen, where he's had nearly as many innings, 25 and 2/3, he's fanned 23 batters in that span, good for an 8.1 strikeout rate. Those are both, not really high numbers, especially if you're going to compare them to what Trey Gibson and Michael Ferret and Braxton Bragg are doing, but it's worth pointing that out. And maybe he's able to ramp the stuff up a little bit more in the bullpen. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on it the rest of the way to see if the strikeout rate continues to be much higher out of the bullpen for him than it has been out of the rotation so far.
Nice pull there. Maybe he's just got that mentality. It takes a different type of guy. Maybe he fits that. I will always root for Correa because I still remember he was the guy. I don't know if you guys remember the video, but he was the guy that the video got released where when the Orioles scout telling him that the Orioles were signing him and he starts just bawling his eyes out there in front of everybody. That hit me. So I am always going to cheer for Correa and hope he finds success in this organization.
Absolutely. And with that, that does it for this show. We will be back later on this week to unveil our first half all-star team for all of the Orioles organization. That's going to include players that have appeared in games at the low levels of the system as well as up in AAA this season. So you're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. Nick's latest draft piece dropped for subscribers on Monday. You don't want to miss that and more Orioles coverage over there. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member today at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list and access to Patreon-only Discords channels within our community. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's show, we unveil our first half all-star team. This is going to be taking a look at the best of the Orioles prospects over the first half of the minor league season, which is just about roughly finished. So we're going to dive into those players, and it's a broad group, including some guys that have spent some time in the FCL this year, as well as up in AAA. And that is probably the best place to start with our catcher, and it's probably an obvious pick, but it's a very fitting one. Samuel Basallo, who has just put together what has been so far perhaps the best run of his career and on pace to probably be the best full season of Basallo's minor league career with the Tides. As of our recording on Monday night, Basallo is hitting .271 on the year with a .968 OPS to go with 15 home runs across just 48 games and 166 at-bats. His 15 home runs to this point in the season are just 4 off his total in 127 games last year and only 5 off the 20 he had in 114 games back in 2023. And although an injury prevented him from getting behind the plate until a little bit further into the season, Basallo has looked better behind the plate defensively this year through 16 games at catcher thus far. So this is, I think, the best place for us to start because Basallo, given his success on the year, not to mention his prospect pedigree, probably one of the early front runners for player of the year in the Orioles system.
You mean the 15th best prospect according to Baseball America, who I think Eli Ben Pratt would disagree with that ranking because he just came out with a piece, his I guess it's monthly or every other week piece about just diving really deep into the numbers, and he continues to be extremely high on Samuel Basallo, as he very well should be, and we are. And yeah, if you don't have a Baseball America subscription or Patreon subscription in our Discord, definitely check that out. It sounds like you cannot really attack Samuel Basallo in the zone at all. So as soon as his swing decisions improve to the point where he's only swinging at pitches drivable in the zone, he's going to be an unstoppable force, meeting an immovable object, I guess. But yeah, love Samuel Basallo. Obviously, we've been screaming it from the rafters. I still commit to the statement I've made that he's the best prospect out of all the guys that have come up during the Elias tenure. I think he's a better prospect than Gunnar, Adley, and Jackson, and that is not a slight on those guys at all because those guys were incredible prospects as well. But Samuel Basallo, I put this out on Blue Sky the other day. If you look at his numbers in 2024 in AAA versus 2025, His walk rate has gone from 5.8% to 14.6%. His strikeout rate has come down from 31.4% to 24%. His isolated slugging percentage has gone up from 148 to 321, OPS from 638 to 973, or whatever exactly it was at the time of recording, and WRC plus from 66 to 153. And if you want to take that further, he started off maybe a tiny bit slow. If you go since April 30th, he's batting 288 with an OPS of 1,034, a 348 ISO, and 169 WRC plus. And then from June 1st, he's batting 360 with an 1188 OPS, a 380 ISO, and 211 WRC plus. So just getting better, just like he always is, the snowball traveling downhill, gaining momentum as the season goes along.
And he's had multiple injuries there at the beginning of the year, so he's clearly fully healthy. Warm weather, nobody likes playing in the cold. Yeah, I will just to add to that, Eli Ben Parat in the teaser tweet. I love the teaser tweet he put out Sunday night. I think he sums it up. Like those numbers are fantastic. We should never stop just putting out Sammy Basayo numbers because each one you find is incredible. But Eli sums it up pretty succinctly. Quote, incredible, God tier, amazing, holy shit. That's Sammy Basayo.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll go now to the infield. And another standout catcher is actually our first baseman. We gave ourselves a little bit of flexibility with the positions because this guy has also played a lot of first base this year down at Delmarva, and that is Yasmil Boucher. He's joined on the right side of the infield by Aaron Estrada, who has followed up a very strong 2024 season with what is perhaps an even better 2025 while playing at High A Aberdeen. And then at third base, Luis Almeida, after 2 seasons where Almeida really struggled to stay healthy, he has been healthy this year and has thrived after a good run down in the FCL. Was promoted to Delmarva, and so far, over a small sample size, has looked pretty good with the Shorebirds. And then at shortstop, Jeremiah Jackson, someone who was not in the system this time a year ago, now signed by the Orioles over the offseason from the Mets organization, began this year at Chesapeake, proved to be one of the steadier bats in a Bay Sox lineup that has really been hit by injuries this year, and then was promoted to Norfolk, where he's perhaps been even a little bit better than he was at Chesapeake. So maybe that's not the biggest prospect name for this list, but certainly a guy that statistically is deserving in Jackson. So just give me your thoughts, guys, on this group of infielders.
I think.
Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Like no disrespect, obviously, to Yasmil Boucher and Aaron Estrada and Luis Almeida. Like we have sung the praises of Boucher many times this year. We have sung the praises that we just did sing the praises of Estrada, I think, last week. They're both having fantastic years. And I think, though, this kind of shows you something that we talked about a lot at the beginning of the year. Coming into the year, it's no surprise that the infield is in the upper levels is kind of weak. To put a damper on this, but the strength in this, as far as infield prospects are concerned, is definitely in the FCL right now. It's in the Dominican Summer League right now. But Estrada's having a really solid year. Boucher seems like he's a very viable catching prospect in this organization. We've mentioned his weird Rule 5 status. It's not weird, it's normal, it is what it is, but just the fact that he's already Rule 5 eligible, but he's only in Delmarva, which is going to make things interesting. And for me, like Almeida, like I think he's on the precipice of a breakout. I truly do. I watched him the other day at third base. He had a fantastic play. I haven't really seen the arm tested, so can't really speak to that, but the range, the instinct was beautiful, smooth over there in the couple plays he got. He's got a 122 WRC plus since being promoted to Delmarva. And the home runs aren't there, and that was supposed to be a big part of his game, but he's got 11 doubles. The walk and strikeout numbers look good. I don't know. I think, like I said, he looks the part. Take that for what it's worth. But I don't know. I just think among that group, we've talked about the other guys a lot already. Almeida, we haven't talked about as much, but I think by the end of the year, Almeida is going to be a much bigger conversation we're having.
Yeah, I was going to just say that this is the weak point in the Orioles farm system right about now. The infield prospects, which again, to repeat you, is not a slight on the guys that we've selected here because they're obviously having great seasons. That's why they're being picked, and there's still flashes here and there in the upper in full season ball. But really, yeah, it's the guys that are just now hitting Delmarva, the Joshua Lorenzo, Luis Almeida, the FCL and DSL guys that we've talked about a lot over the past year or so. Jamon Noel, if you want to just look at a couple of days ago. But yeah, just to talk about these guys in general, I think I'll start with Almeida, who's just been a doubles machine so far this season, both in the FCL and in Delmarva. Yeah, I agree. He's kind of breakout candidate for sure. If it's not this season, it's next because, again, just 19 years old in April, and he's walking a decent amount. And he's got a little bit of a jump in his strikeout rate moving to Delmarva, which is to be expected in his first 41 plate appearances. He's got a chance to get that to go down, but he's holding his own, more than his own. And even Joshua Lorenzo, who was, a close runner-up for that position, he's not performing as well since his jump up to Delmarva. He's batting 100, but he's walked 21% of the time, and he's got a 188 BABIP, but he was robbed of a home run I saw in one game. He hits the ball with authority. He certainly looks the part, just like Luis Almeida. So just another option there. We'll go over to Yasmel Buche. I just think this guy's like super well-rounded and really putting it all together. He's come down a little bit from where he was hitting close to 300 for the first couple months of the year, but still 152 WRC plus, 18% walk rate, 22% strikeout rate. Again, we've talked about it. He just needs to be able to lift the ball a little bit more. But even so, he's got 10 doubles, 2 triples, 6 homers. Great walk to strikeout ratio. Just seems like a really good 20-year-old left-handed hitting catcher first baseman. So can't complain there. Aaron Estrada, he's come down a little bit. It's like he was scorching hot for the first couple months, had a long slump, came back a little bit. He's kind of ebbing and flowing, but 117 WRC plus, striking out less than 20%, walking around league average. He hasn't had the big power outburst that he did, but I think if and when he gets promoted to Bowie, that might happen there. And yeah, Jeremiah Jackson just killing it. What a heater he's been on since being promoted to AAA. Norfolk batting 364 with an 1119 OPS, 192 WRC plus, only striking out 8.7% of the time. He's never going to walk, but he makes contact. He's kind of like a very poor man's Joey Ortiz, or who knows? I mean, maybe they found something to unlock in a similar way to Joey Ortiz because he's 25 years old. So he's actually around the age that Ortiz was when he was in the upper minors for the Orioles system. Maybe they saw something when they signed him. I didn't. I just kind of looked the other way when in one ear out the other when I saw that we signed this guy, but maybe they got something.
Pull up, you don't have to do it right now, but when you get an opportunity, pull up Jeremiah Jackson's AAA StatCast card. It is, it's fun. I'll say that. It is one extreme or the other, but yeah.
Before we move over to the outfield, I do want to mention this. We were just talking about how the infield, I think it's fair to say that it is a weaker group of prospects than it has been in years past. And in fairness, it's really hard to top the group of infielders that were in the system from 2020 up until last year. It's already produced 2 Major League All-Stars. Probably going to have a third pretty soon in Jackson Holliday. Not to mention Joey Ortiz, Connor Norby came out of that group. It's going to be really, really tough to top that. But do you think that it's maybe been a little bit, I wouldn't say deliberate, but do you think it's kind of been a de-emphasis of selecting infielders early in the draft outside of Griffo Farrell last year that has gotten it to this point?
Kind of, sort of, in my opinion. I mean, they've obviously had a focus on the outfielders in the past couple of drafts, and maybe it's just, I think they like guys up the middle. Maybe just wasn't there. The shortstops, the second baseman, the third baseman with the hit tool that they like, and they just, when they were picking, it happened to be mostly outfielders this time around. So, we'll see how that works out for them. But the pitching obviously is, and we got some picks coming up in a couple weeks here that could turn this around a little bit too. And also the timing of the international product really just humming at this point. They had a lot of infielders there, so maybe they just, lean in on that a little bit. You can never be fully stocked and loaded at all times, especially when you're a winning ball club, but I think they've managed it okay so far.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear somebody like John Mioli talk about Griffo Farrell, I remember when we had him on to talk about him in the very beginning of the season. I think his thoughts and opinions kind of match what we said on draft night. Like, he was drafted for the floor, right? And I think that was deliberate at this point. Now that you bring that up, do you need to spend a first round pick on a super high ceiling infielder when you've got Jordan Westberg, Gunnar Henderson, Kobe Mayo, Jackson Holliday, Adley Rutschman, Samuel Basayo on your infield? Like, probably not. Of course, you don't draft for need. You always need every position, but yeah, interesting thought. But yeah, that is a good point to end the infield on with those. Yes, it might be weak down in the farm system right now, especially in the upper levels, but when you're going to have, in a couple of weeks here, you're going to have 3 Major League All-Stars graduated from this list. You're able to use others to trade for starting pitchers. Like, you've done pretty darn well over the last 6-7 years.
Absolutely. Now we will go to the outfield, where we have 3 players that the Orioles have taken in recent drafts. You go back to 2022 or 2023, Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian, or no, it was 2022. Judd Fabian and Dylan Beavers, part of that class, both of them putting up excellent numbers in AAA Norfolk this season. They are in our outfield, and they are joined by Nate George, who has shot up the prospect rankings with a really strong year, beginning at the FCL. Now he's up in Delmarva, and so far over the first couple of weeks with the Shorebirds, looking very good at the plate. Now, Beavers is banged up in AAA right now, but when he's been healthy, he's been very productive. And Fabian has put together, I think, what has been a reasonably successful year, hitting for power. He's cut the strikeouts down a little bit, still walking, still making highlight reel play after highlight reel play in center field. So this, to me, is probably not the total highlight of this roster, but this is a really, really strong group.
Very strong group. And there's even guys behind these guys that, we talked about Bradfield. He's still got the same upside we've talked about. He's been hampered with some slight injuries and not exactly firing on all cylinders. I think Nick did a good job on our bonus minor league recap this week talking about Bradfield. And if Trimble's healthy, he seems like he's talented. Tavian Josenberger, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the international crop's coming down from the lower minors. But man, I'm all in on Nate George, especially after being able to watch him play on camera night in and night out. Guy plays like his hair's on fire, and I love it. Like, his energy is unmatched. And yeah, you can just feel how bad he wants this. He wants to be like this superstar player. And so far, I'm going to say he has been. I mean, just turned 19 years old and is just doing everything right, throwing out runners with his arm, making plays in the outfield, stolen a bunch of bases, and his percentage has gotten better as the season's gone on. Hitting for extra bases, hits a home run. He's running like he's going for an inside the Parker, but it clears the right center field wall. Hits a triple the same exact way later in that game. I mean, he's just thrilling to watch play baseball, and I think our next prospect top 50 update is going to you'll see where I have him then. Judd Fabian, he's who he is. He just keeps refining his game year after year as he adjusts to the next level, and he just continues to do it, walking 15% of the time. Got his strikeout rate down to 27.7% of the time, which is as low as it's been since 2023 in high A at 25.7. It was at almost 41% in AAA last year, so clearly cutting down on the swing and miss. He's always going to have a low batting average, but on base 336. That's really solid. Slugging 449, plenty good. With that incredible defense that we've talked about a lot, he's going to be a major leaguer for a long time. And yeah, you got to love what he's been able to do. I think a post trade deadline is when you'll see him make his major league debut. And he'll probably struggle for the rest of 2025 at the major league level. But I expect him to continue to do what he does and make adjustments in the offseason and have a pretty productive 2026 season for the Orioles. And Dylan Beavers, I mean, we can't say enough about how much he's developed between 2024 and 2025. He's just walking more than ever, striking out less than ever. He's started hitting a couple home runs before he got hurt. Like this past week, he's doing it all. And he seems like that 5-tool right fielder that the Orioles had so long with Nick Markakis. I think I see a similar trajectory there, but unfortunately he's got to stop running into things. Him and Colton Cowser, hopefully they're not in the same outfield right next to each other too much, because I could see some disastrous things coming there. But yeah, great outfield crop for sure.
Please don't have Dylan Beavers and Colton Cowser ever room together. I'll say that. Yeah, Fabian, like 12 home runs, second most in the International League. Only Carson McCusker has more at 14. That's a creative player. I think Fangraphs has a blip on their leaderboard there. 7th highest walk rate in the International League and top 25 in WRC plus. The only thing with Fabian, honestly, at this point is like, what's up with the stolen bases? He had 31 2 years ago. And granted, those are like lower level minors numbers where the catchers aren't that good. But he had 31 stolen bases 2 years ago. He still had 16 last year. He only has 2 this year. He hasn't been caught. So he's only attempted 2 stolen bases all year. I don't know of any injury. He hasn't I don't think he's missed any time this year except for his ended up being paternity leave. Like that was it. So that's it. Just be another dimension to his game. It's not like because he's not stealing bases. He's doing everything else, like Bob just said, better that we know that he does. Beavers, yeah, nothing really else to say there. Just he's 5th in the International League in WRC plus and has the 10th best strikeout rate in the International League. And no one in the year of our Lord 2025 saw that coming. And yeah, George, just God, watch one game of Delmarva if you haven't. I think you can watch this stuff for free now if you like download the Bally app. Which is a good reminder for next year to not pay for MLB TV. But watch one Delmarva game. Just do it. And you can watch it on replay. Pick a game. Go look at his box score. Find a fun game. Go back and watch it. And you will fall in love with Nate George. I promise you. That energy, like I want 1/100th of his energy to get through my day. This kid is going to be, I feel like he's going to be one of these guys who has more people get to the ballpark and watch him in Delmarva or Aberdeen. You're going to see more and more people be like, I like this kid. And he's going to become, I think, a pretty big fan favorite as he continues to climb up.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times especially if you're at the game in the minors, you're like immediately can spot, okay, this is the best player on this team. And I get that energy from Nate George, and he's a 19-year-old who just showed up in Delmarva.
Without a doubt. And we'll wrap up our group of position players with our designated hitter, and that is Creed Willems. Now, Willems has cooled off a bit since his really hot start to the season, but he's still putting together what might be his most well-rounded season offensively in his career. 8 home runs this year in 57 games as of Monday with a 248 batting average, 116 WRC plus. And most impressively, his strikeout rate has dropped quite a bit after striking out in 20.5% of his plate appearances last year between high A and double A. He's got that number down to 17.9% this year, while the walk rate has only taken a very slight dip from 10.7% last year down to, actually the walk rate is consistent from last year, 9.4% walk rate last year, 9.4% walk rate so far this year. So Willems getting a lot better behind the plate defensively. We should point that out too, but we also have to make room for Samuel Basayo, so Willems is our DH.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, the catching group for the Orioles minor league, there's just not even enough praise to go around for what they've done there. And Willems is, yeah, I do think I've noticed improvement behind the plate as well, but just the consistency this year has been a nice change of pace, because usually he starts off scorching hot, goes on a cold streak, and then gets promoted and kind of starts the cycle all over again. But he's been pretty consistent. This swing looks a little more under control. And yeah, I think it's easy to forget that he's another young 22-year-old, just turned 22 this month, I believe. So, yeah, young catcher who could be in AAA by the end of this year.
Yeah, I mean he's making more contact than he pretty much ever has since he was in like rookie ball. He's swinging and missing way less than he has been. Yeah, he's hitting a cold slump right now, sure, but yeah, you zoom out, you look at the overall numbers, he's still putting up a career best season right now. Career high 248 batting average. You're like, all right, but this is a catcher. He's still got a 775 OPS. I thought maybe you'd see a little bit more home run power from him down there in Bowie, but when he's striking out even less and maintaining the high walk rate and doing everything else so much better, I'll take a little less power out of that bet. And I would love to know, like, again, same thing. I would love to know the work behind the plate, like from a pitcher's point of view. When they get to work with that group of catchers that's in Double A, we had Keegan Gillies talked about it a little bit when he was on the show with us a couple weeks ago. Like that's got to be fun for those pitchers in Double A to have. It doesn't matter who you've got behind the plate that night. You've got an outstanding defensive catcher, but I'm not ready, but I am ready to have that conversation about Creed. Do you trade him? Do you keep him? Is he protected? I am ready to have that conversation and anxious to see what the Orioles decide to do with him this year.
We'll move on now to our starting pitching. And I think that with the season the Orioles have had in the minor leagues, the pitching has really been what has stood out so far this year. And that is best shown, I think, through these four pitchers that we chose as our starters: Braxton Bragg, Trey Gibson, Nestor Herman, and Michael Ferret. Now, the way we put this roster together was that the three of us each submitted our own roster, and then whoever had the most mentions on a list was a player that we chose. This is the only area where we actually split. I had Levi Wells over Ferret in my rotation. Bob and Nick chose Ferret, though, and that's why he is on this list. And it's a very, very tough call, and I'll get into my thoughts about it a little bit more. But just to shout out this group: Bragg, Gibson, Herman, and Ferret, all putting together really strong years. In the cases of Bragg, Gibson, and Herman, that's been across two levels in the minor leagues so far this year. And I think it's not going to be a whole lot longer until we're able to say the same about Ferret.
Yeah, the Bragg stuff, I don't even know what else to say about Braxton Bragg. And we just talked about him on the last episode. I want to quickly just talk about Trey Gibson and Nestor Herman, because we also touched on Ferret. But with Trey Gibson, like if you pull up the strikeout leaderboard for all the minor leagues, you see Jonah Tong at the top at 107, future Oriole, only minor league pitcher with more than 100 strikeouts right now. But you look at the rest of the list and you see names like Chase Burns, now a major leaguer, Trey Savage. I know he's a Blue Jay, but I love Trey Savage. Ian Seymour, Gage Jump, all these big names, elite prospects from big schools. And then you see Trey Gibson there with 85 strikeouts, good for 11th in all of minor league baseball. But if you filter by strikeout percentage, and I put 50 inning minimum to make sure I got starters down here, he is third in the minor leagues with a 37% strikeout rate. And he had a 30% strikeout rate and a 10% walk rate between Delmarva and Aberdeen last year as he was building up because he missed a full year. And to now a 37% strikeout rate with a 9% walk rate, the numbers are fantastic this year. Please don't be that person on Twitter who screenshots his ERA to try to prove a point. I don't care what his ERA is because everything else is phenomenal. And when you're done with this, if you're watching this live or whatever, if you're watching on YouTube, when you're done with this video, go over to Baseball America's YouTube and watch the interview he just did with Baseball America. Listening to this kid talk about pitching is so much fun. I said the other week when we talked about Gibson, like I don't think people truly understand how dominant his stuff is, and I'm going to keep saying that all year because his stuff has been phenomenal, and he's even better this year. And with Herman, I just think Herman is getting kind of overshadowed and underappreciated a bit. Strikeouts are down, walks are up since going up to Double A, yeah, but when you have these breakouts like Gibson and Bragg and even Ferret are having, Herman it's been hit or miss. He's had a couple of starts in Double A that didn't go very well, but he also has outings where he went 5.2 shutout innings twice. He has 6 shutout inning performance. And in those 3 starts, he has 16 strikeouts to just 4 walks. In his other outings, it's been, 4 or 5 runs, 4 walks, Strikeouts maybe haven't been there, but that could be maybe just the command isn't there that night. He had one of those outings in Aberdeen this year too, where you could just tell from the start he had no command, and it spiraled from there. You obviously don't want to see that consistently, but maybe it's a combination of he has one of those nights since he's been moved up to Double A, and you don't know what guys are working on. Like it could be tonight, hey, you're throwing a fastball to this spot in this count every single time, and opposing hitters are going to pick up on that. He could still walk off the mound and they could say, you did a fantastic job tonight. You gave up 4 runs, but he did exactly what he was told all night long. We don't know. And so I think it could be a mixture of both, but on some nights, but when I see those good starts that he's had in Double A have been phenomenal, the kid can do it. And so I just think he kind of is going under the radar a little bit this year because of that. And we have other guys breaking out as big as they are.
Yeah, the pitching in this organization, it's so exciting right now. Yeah, I predicted over on the Discord today that Trey Gibson, Michael Ferret, Braxton Bragg are all going to be top 100 prospects before the 2026 season. And we'll be sitting here complaining, why isn't Nestor Herman the 4th one on that list? Because these guys are just absolutely killing it right now. Trey Gibson, like you said, 37% strikeout rate, 9% walk rate. Ferret's 35% strikeout rate, 8% walk rate. Bragg, 33% strikeout rate, 8% walk rate. And Herman, even 28% strikeout rate, 10% walk rate. It's a little bit worse, but like you said, and I completely agree, especially with Herman, that they're probably just working on things that it's what happens in the minors. They don't really care about the results as much as the development. And that's what makes the results for Bragg and Ferret and even Gibson, despite the ERA. That's what makes it so impressive is because they're doing the same things. They're still just working on things. They might have to spam a certain pitch in a certain count, like Nick said, but they're still getting the strikeouts and the results despite that. So yeah, it's just beyond thrilling. And we haven't even talked about a lot of other guys that are having good seasons, but this is about the all-stars and this is the cream of the crop. And I think the baseball world will catch up to this by March 2026.
Yeah, I hope so, because there are some pitchers, putting together excellent seasons. And Nick, I think, put it into perspective how good Gibson has been, not just in comparison to other prospects in the Orioles system, but in other prospects across the game. Something that jumps out at me is we did a show, it's only been a couple of weeks ago now. And at the time, Gibson and Braxton Bragg were tied for the organization lead in strikeouts. Now, Bragg has been on the IL and missed a start since then, but Gibson is now 13 strikeouts ahead of Bragg, who's in 3rd behind Blake Money, who has 11 fewer strikeouts than Gibson does in 5 or about 4 2/3 more innings pitched this year. So that shows you, kind of puts into perspective how good Gibson has been with the strikeouts. And honestly, if we had to put together a list of, let's say, 7 or 8 starting pitchers from this system, I think you could have done it and done it with some real credibility. Eber Cartaya has put together a really nice year down in Delmarva after a tough start. Evan Yates has been really solid. Cameron Weston is settling in his own at AAA and pitching really well. So there's a lot of guys that we didn't include here that I think we easily could have based on performance. And it's because these 4 have stood out. Now, I will say for my last spot, I went with Wells over Ferret in a bit of a coin toss. And I think really for me, it's just that Wells' turnaround this year has been one of the better stories in the farm system. And I just wanted to recognize that. But I don't think you can really go wrong with Ferret either.
Yeah, this is going to be a hell of a rotation. Top 4 with, let's just say, Kyle Bradish sticks around as the ace, and Levi Wells could be your closer that throws 102 miles per hour that we've seen with some other teams enviously in the past. But yeah, Levi Wells, he's at least been, I think he's got more innings than Ferret, so he's got that going for him, but he doesn't have, and again, it's the same exact thing. And Keith Law is still wrong about this. He's not striking out as many guys as the guys that did make our list. But again, he's probably working on specific things, especially in Bowie, Chesapeake, more than any other place we've seen it in years past, where they're more about just throw strikes. We're throwing this pitch for a strike. That's what we're trying to do. So yeah, Levi Wells, another fantastic candidate as well.
Yeah, To talk about Ferret again really quick, just because I know we just talked about him in the last episode, but yeah, that last spot for me was, do I give it to Correa, who's had a really fantastic year? Do I go one of these other arms? Do I go Levi Wells? Levi Wells, has been doing a lot of his work in shorter stints out of the bullpen. Ferret, for me, it was just like, even though he doesn't have the innings, the numbers are off the charts. We just rattled them off on the last episode. And so when he is on the mound, I'll say what, Braxton Bragg's probably been the most dominant arm down on the farm. I would put Michael Ferret number 2 when he's on the mound. It's kind of hard to compete against a 106 average against a 35% strikeout rate, a 16% swinging strike rate. He's got a called strike plus whiff percentage of almost 34% on the year. And the one thing that I think does stick out, he's dominating, absolutely dominating all year long. He can't throw a first strike to save his life, it looks like, this year. So he's working from behind all year long. And he's like it's a game. He's like, I need a challenge. I'm going to start 1-0 60% of the time. Yeah, I think you start getting ahead of guys. What could Michael Ferret do? Like, it's kind of scary to think about.
We'll recognize the last player on our roster, and that is our closer, Keegan Gillis. We vented last week about how we wish Gillis would be promoted up to AAA Norfolk because he is more than deserving at this point. He has more than proven himself at AA, but we'll just take a moment now to recognize what he's done. Through 29 innings pitched this season, Gillis has posted a 1.24 ERA while striking out 33 batters and walking just 4. And after struggling a little bit with his command last year at AA, the dip in the walks has probably been the most encouraging thing to come from the 27-year-old right-hander. And although saves really don't matter in the minor leagues and are not an indicator of whether or not someone is going to be a closer down the line, it is worth pointing out that Gillis does have 8 saves for the Bay Sox this season.
8 more than he should have, only because he should have them in AAA. Just absurd at this point. I do not get it whatsoever, and we've talked about it a million times in the past, so we don't have to dwell on that. But when he's been on the mound, he's been absolutely dominant. I know Eno Saris, one of the things he looks at for what is translatable from the minors to the majors is strikeout to walk percentage. I think Gillis passed the test there with like 37 strikeouts to 4 walks or whatever it is. So yeah, just incredibly impressive. And I would say that even if he wasn't a guest on the show this season.
Yeah. You look at the AAA roster, and I don't think it's going to happen. Honestly, Luis F. Castillo has been rehabbing. He's about to return. They, for some reason, traded cash to get him. I think it was the Rates and Barrels where they joked about that. Like, what if this was just a really funny prank? It's not that funny, but what if this was just the Orioles front office saying, "Oh, you want Luis Castillo? You got him. Shut up. Be happy." I don't think so, but it was comedic timing. He's going to be back in Norfolk's bullpen, I imagine, in the next couple of days, maybe this week. And then they just signed whoever Kyle Tyler is. They just signed him. He's now in Norfolk's bullpen. It's frustrating. Yeah. Bring up Keegan Gillis for the love of God, but we've said that 20 times already this year.
Absolutely. And with that, now we'll head into our final segment. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre or post-game drink. And with the Orioles in town all week this week, not only do you have the opportunity to go have that pre or post-game drink at the brewery, but you can check out Checker Spot behind the beer stand, or the beer stand behind home plate, where you can find one of their signature beers, The Bird is the Word. And for our last call segment tonight, we each are going to shout out a player or two, in Bob's case, that did not make our individual all-star teams, nor did they make the overall all-star team, but we think that they're going to put together a really good second half and are worth following over the coming months. So, Nick, I'm actually going to start with you here because one of our live listeners dropped a comment asking about this pitcher and saying that he was a guy that probably could have been in the mix as a starter.
Yeah, I considered him. He was actually on my first run through. I had Gungor, and I'm like, Ferret again. Those numbers so dominant. We're talking about a 6'5", 240-pound lefty who has 97 in the tank. So why are we, and when I say we, I mean Orioles fans who follow the minor leagues, the bigger prospect community as a whole, why are we, us ourselves included, why are we not more enamored with this guy? Like, I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 prospect in this organization next year. I'm not saying he's going to be sitting at the top of a major league rotation or maybe even in the middle of a major league rotation in 2 years. But still, like he has a 33% strikeout rate on the year, 183 average against, contact low, swing and miss high. He had 6 walks in his first 2 starts that lasted a total of 2.2 innings. He has 13 walks in his next 10 outings. In his last 2 starts, he's gone 5 innings and 5 1/3 innings with high A Aberdeen after being very carefully eased into the season. Again, I mentioned this again on the weekly episode. We'll just spoil the whole weekly episode, so you don't have to sign up to become a patron and listen to him. But I said, look, pay attention. I think I've said this before on the main show too, but pay attention to certain people, how and when they talk about prospects. And I go back to John Mioli dropping the Sebastian Gongora nuggets out of the blue multiple times back in January and February. Like, I think those were nuggets. Those were the clues. He's dropping them for us specifically. I know he is, but those are the nuggets that people have been telling him about Gongora, and he's trying to pass that information along as little by little as he can. We just weren't listening, myself included. I'm listening, I'm watching, and Gongora is he's a lot of fun, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he's got such an awkward delivery too. Like that has to be so tough to read as a hitter out of the hand, the way he's kind of doesn't look like he's fully extending, but clearly it's working for him. He's again, mid-90s fastball from the left side, ridiculous changeup. I mean, I'm very excited to continue to follow Gongora in the second half and beyond. For me, I kind of cheated. I'm only going to mention my pitcher that I picked just very briefly. Keeler Morphe. He disappeared on us after a couple appearances where he walked the stadium and went on the injured list for injured finger. I'm just waiting at some point in the next month or so to just be like, Keeler Morphe is back, and he's the Keeler Morphe we fell in love with last season. So preparing myself for that. But my real pick is Ellis Cuevas, the outfielder / first baseman / wherever you need him. He'll stand there and he can hit. 20-year-old left-handed bat. He started the year on the injured list and was pretty slow to start once he got back to low A Delmarva, but he's been pretty good of late. And overall, despite only batting 245 with a 720 OPS with the run environment in low A, he's got a 122 WRC plus with that, and he's only getting better. He had a really outstanding game on Sunday. He's only striking out 14% of the time, walking almost 15% of the time. His ISO is 092, and we know he's got that big power in his bat. He finally did hit a couple home runs in the last week or so. I just think he's fully operational at this point, fully healthy, and I think you're going to see him take off, and he'll be in Aberdeen if and when some of those guys get moved up to Double-A Bowie, maybe Austin O'Verne, because I don't know if anybody else is going to be deserving of a promotion that's in Aberdeen. But Ellis Cuevas, I'm very excited to see how he finishes the season, and I think he's setting himself up to be like a real solid top 25, 30 prospect in the system by the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Cuevas really seems to be healthy now and is settling in at the plate. I made this pick, full disclosure, I did put this down on our outline before Brad and this prospect was removed from Sunday's game, but I'm going to leave him here anyways because I think there's some valid points to make about where his season could go from here if he is able to stay healthy, and that's Enrique Bradfield Jr. Bradfield has missed a good portion of the season so far because of a hamstring injury that he had early on, and it's easy at first glance to be underwhelmed by his offensive output this year. He's only hitting in the 240s with Double-A Chesapeake. The power certainly has not come along yet, like I think some people were hoping it would. Just one home run to go with 7 doubles and a triple during his time at Double-A. But there's a few things that I want to point out that give me hope that as the season gets on and he gets hopefully further removed from the injury he had early this year and is able to stay healthy. And that is, there are some really positive signs right now in his stat line that I think he can build from. For starters, he has walked as much as he has struck out this season with the Bay Sox. 16.3% walk rate, 16.3% strikeout rate. So 21 of each in 129 plate appearances. The other thing is he's got a WRC plus of 112. He has been hitting the ball on the ground, I think, a little bit more than you would like to see. But I do think that as the year goes on, the Orioles can work on the launch angle a little bit more, have him hitting the ball hard in the air, not necessarily for home run power, because I maintain what I've said about Bradfield since the Orioles drafted him. You don't need Bradfield to hit 15 to 20 home runs a season for him to be valuable. He's going to give you value in a lot of other ways. What you do need, though, is for him to have enough gap power that his balls in play are not going to be caught and that his legs will allow him to turn what for a lot of other guys will be singles into doubles and doubles into triples. That's where Bradfield's value is going to lie in the future. So I wouldn't look at the lack of home run power so far as a discouraging sign. For me, it's really just about him being able to get his reps in, get further removed from the injury, and I think the production is going to tick up. Hopefully he avoids the IL and that this move on Sunday was just a precautionary one. If he is going to be out for a little while, I would probably throw Jordan Sanchez's name out there as someone who's going to really burst onto the radar in the coming months, because I think that he will get the bump up from the FCL to Delmarva at some point. I'm going to stick with Bradfield just because I think that there's more than what meets the eye with his stat line this year. And as long as he's able to get his reps in, he's going to get a lot better before the season ends.
It is good to note that it was a blowout victory for the Bay Sox when he was pulled. So maybe you're right. Hopefully it is just like super precautionary. Maybe he's back in the lineup on Tuesday, or maybe he goes on the 7-day IL and is back in about a week or so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and it is worth pointing out that this hamstring injury that popped up on Sunday was on the opposite leg that Bradfield had hurt earlier in the year. Hamstring was on his left side that caused him to go on the IL. This was on the right side, so it's not a re-aggravation of the injury he had earlier this season. So fingers crossed that he's able to avoid the IL, because I think the production is going to tick upwards. And for that does it for this show. We will be back next week to break down all of the latest news in Birdland. And we've got some exciting times coming up, because not only are we getting closer to the MLB All-Star break and the trade deadline, but we're also getting closer to the draft. So look for that and a lot more here in the coming weeks at Orioles on the Verge. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member today at the $3, $5, or $10 levels. You will have access to bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list, access to patron-only channels in our Discord chat, and more. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.